Licensing subcommittee on the 27th of January, due to start at 10 o'clock.
Good morning, everyone. I know we're a few minutes late, just allowing the officer to explain the procedure to members of the public here to speak, so it just held us up just a little bit, that's all it was. I'm Councillor McPherson. I'd like to welcome you all to Cambridge City Council Licensing Subcommittee. And before I ask people to introduce themselves, can I go to legal representative to appoint the chair, please?
Yes, thank you. Could I ask for a proposer for Councillor McPherson as chair?
Yes, I'm happy to propose.
Thank you, Councillor Pounds. And for a seconder? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Griffin.
So thank you for that, everyone. So all we'll do, we'll just go around the room rather than me introducing everyone. It works an awful lot better. So if I could ask the councillors just to introduce themselves first.
Good morning, I'm Councillor Diana Pounds. I'm ward member for Romsey and I'm Deputy Mayor of Cambridge.
Hi, I'm Tim Griffin, councillor for Coleridge Ward.
Thank you so much. And if you'd be so kind to go from this end of the room, that'd be great. Just to introduce your name and your role here, that's all. Thank you.
Ashley Raymond, Health and Safety Consultant for the applicant.
Richard Maskell, licensed applicant and event organiser.
Martin Barker, representative for the applicant.
Rupert Burton, acoustic consultant for the applicant.
Thank you very much. We'll come over to this side of the room, a legal representative. Members of the public, that'd be fine, because as you speak, you'll introduce your name as you stand up. Is that okay with you? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ian Hawkins, legal representative.
Alex Beebe, Environmental Health Officer.
Luke Hatchbell, Environmental Health and Licensing Support Team Leader.
Claire Tunnicliffe, Committee Manager.
Thank you very much. And Sarah's running the streaming, so she's not actually taking part in the meeting. She's just making sure everything technically actually works for us. Sorry?
Yvonne O'Donnell, Environmental Health Manager.
Nearly forgot you in the back row there, everyone. Okay, declaration of interest, members, anybody in the room? I will remind you that that's fine because declaration of interest can be made at any time as the meeting progresses. So if anything comes up that you wish to point out that may be a prejudicial interest, you can do so at the time. Thank you. So I think it's over to Luke.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
An application under Section 17 of the Licensing Act 2003 to apply for a premises licence with respect to Cambridge Rugby Union Club has been received from London Road Event Hire Services Limited. The application was served on Cambridge City Council on the 9th of December 2024. A copy of the application was also served on each responsible authority. The application plan is attached to the report at Appendix 1. The applicant is seeking to provide the following licensable activities: supply of alcohol on the premises from Friday from 5 p.m. till 10:30 p.m. and Saturday 12 p.m. till 10:30 p.m. Recorded music, live music and performance of dance, all indoors and outdoors, from Friday 5 p.m. till 11 p.m. and Saturday 12 p.m. till 11 p.m. In 2025, the licence will only be used for Saturday the 5th of July 2025 with a capacity of 2,499 people. From 2026, it will be held over one weekend on a Friday and Saturday with a capacity of 4,999 people. In accordance with the regulations of the Act, the application was advertised on the premises and in a local newspaper on the 20th of December to invite representations from responsible authorities and other persons. The last date for submitting representations was the 7th of January 2025. Representations were received from 24 other persons. The representations are attached to the report at Appendix 2. No representations were received from any of the responsible authorities. Cambridgeshire Constabulary and Environmental Health engaged in pre-application advice and jointly agreed conditions. These conditions are attached to the report at Appendix 3. All conditions that have been offered in the operating schedule have been attached to the report at Appendix 4. These conditions will appear on any premises licence if granted and can be added to and or amended by members if they wish, and the application needs to be determined. It's recommended that members determine the application on its individual merits, having reference to the statutory licensing objectives and Cambridge City Council's statement of licensing policy. The proposed premises is not located within a cumulative impact area. The location of the premises already has two separate licences certificates in operation. The Licensing Act 2003 does not limit the number of premises licences that can be in effect at the same premises. A club premises certificate, Club CAM 000026, has been in effect since 15th of December 2005, and Part A of the club premises certificate is attached to the report at Appendix 5. A premises licence, Pre-CAM 000926, has been in effect since 6th of January 2023. The licence holder is Live Tour Promotions Limited, and the licence permits 2 events to be held over one weekend, once a year. Part A of the premises licence is attached to the report as Appendix 6. The DPS on Pre-CAM 000926 is Martin Barker, who is also the agent that submitted the application on behalf of London Road Event Hire Services Limited. However, there is no business connection between Martin Barker and London Road Event Hire Services Limited, or Live Tour Promotions and London Road Event Hire Services Limited. Mr. Barker is a licensing consultant and was approached by London Road Event Hire Services Limited in order to help with the application due to his experience with the location of the premises, licensing and event management. The application is for a new separate premises licence to the 2 mentioned above and must be treated on its own merits. However, as the application is for a premises that already has licence certificates in place, these have been included in the report as they are relevant to the premises. Thank you.
Thanks, Luke. Any questions, members? No?
Not at the moment.
No questions so far? In that case, the floor belongs to you. I guess, sorry, yourself is going to, okay, thank you so much. So if you'd just like to make your representation, there will be no interruptions for you, so just make your representation, then we'll go after that. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Chair. As previously mentioned, we're here to discuss the application for a new premises licence on behalf of Richard Maskell, London Road Event Hire Services Limited at Cambridge Rugby Football Club, Grantchester Road. The application, as it stands, is for an ongoing licence for 2 days per year, namely 1 consecutive Friday and Saturday per annum with a maximum capacity of 499. For 2025, we have restricted the potential activities to 1 day only, namely Saturday, the 5th of July 2025, with a lower capacity of 2499. As mentioned, the timings, operational timings will be on a Friday 1700 to 2300 and Saturday 1200 to 2300, with the supply of alcohol to be 30 minutes before terminal hour. As mentioned, there's been 0 representations from the responsible authorities following liaison and some guidance. I'm just going to invite the applicant just to describe the proposed 2025 event in some detail, then I'll come back with some more information.
Yes, hello. So the proposed event is a music, food and arts day called the Cambridge Day Festival. I run another event in Hertfordshire at a rugby club. So to move on to another rugby club, I live halfway between the two sites. So I'm moving to Camden Gate, which is basically South Cambridgeshire. So I run an event in Letchworth, Hertfordshire, and I'd like to run an event in Cambridgeshire. I've been speaking to the rugby club about it for many months, and we've met with the residents and met with the responsible authorities before putting the application in. So the idea is to run a smaller scale event than what's already run there, which there's other events for 5,000 people, 4,999. The idea was to do a 1-day event, not a 2-day event, and to run a smaller scale to essentially walk before we can run. So that's where we are at the moment with it. So there'll be local food vendors there, local. We're quite involved with the Cambridge Junction, so they'll be running a stage there, which is up the junction, which is like over 20 years old in the town centre, and so they'll be doing like comedy arts, disco. So yeah, it's a dance, music and food festival and a 1-day event for 2025.
Thanks for that. Just to go over some ground that Luke had mentioned as to my involvement. Yes, I am the DPS of an existing premises licence for another business which has run events at the Rugby Club for the past 2 years with capacities of 4,999. On this occasion, I'm purely here as an advisory and consultant role for Richard, mainly given my experience in running events in the location, specific venue requirements, following the events that we've run in the past 2 years, consultation with responsible authorities, and also residents that have led to a higher basic operating standard than perhaps would otherwise be in place. So I guess the key questions here are how will we promote the licensing objectives? We've proposed a wide raft of conditions, some following consultation with the responsible authorities. And they are numerous. I will go through a few just to clarify a few points in there. I guess the main important one, they're all important, but a really key one is that we will follow the full SAG process as a standard with all events of this size. Full event management plan and documentation will be submitted no less than 3 months before the event. There'll be SAG meetings at which the members there will be invited to offer their feedback on those documents, for which then there will be amended if necessary or changed, added to, as happens in most events over that size. Security will be provided by a reputable provider. In this instance, it will be CN Security. They're based in Cambridgeshire. They have operated at other events at the Rugby Club, so have knowledge of the local area, have knowledge of the extensive stewarding that is proposed outside of the Rugby Club itself, and they'll ensure the staff are suitably qualified via SIA. We also propose to erect a CCTV camera at the entrance of the event site. This is in order to record a clear facial image of all people entering the site. Should there be any potential issues, we'll be able to identify people. In issues of public safety and following some consultation with residents, we will be looking to implement security and stewarding outside of the perimeter of the Rugby Club. They will include, but not be limited to, there are 2 stewards at the top of Fulbrook Road to prevent event attendees errantly walking down that way. The road will be coned off for resident access only, and there'll be full signage, no event vehicles to pass down there. There'll be extra roaming security during peak ingress and egress along Grantchester Road. They will also monitor Fulbrook Road and Selwyn Road. There'll also be a steward placed on the entrance of the tennis club and a steward within the perimeter of the Rugby Club itself, patrolling the rear of the Fulbrook Road residences. This is purely in order to absolve any potential antisocial behaviour. A full medical provision will also be on site that will be as per the Purple Guide recommendations. As part of the full event management plan, a full medical plan will be provided to the members of the SAG group. With regards to the prevention of public nuisance, a key condition that we have proposed is that noise limits will be fully agreed with the local authority and a full noise management plan will be agreed. Similar timeframe, 3 months prior to the event. Once that is in place, a letter drop will be made to the residents 1 month prior, detailing full details of setup, live days, breakdown, and that will also include a dedicated festival hotline, so a contact number that will be directly held by someone on site so they can contact someone should there be any issues. We'll also have full-time noise monitoring in operation using Rupert's company, F1 Acoustics, who have experience of monitoring noise in this location, so have the knowledge of the geography and the potential issues that may arise with any weather fluctuations. In terms of protection of children, 2025 at least will be run as a purely over 18s event. There'll be no under 18s. A Challenge 25 will be in operation as well. At this moment, I'm just going to invite Rupert just to briefly discuss the the noise management plan in just a small amount of detail.
Hi there. So yeah, as Martin said, noise management plan will be provided to the local authority, to the environmental health team 3 months in advance. The noise limits will be agreed with them, and only on their say-so will that be what we'd operate to. Throughout the event, we have a consultant in attendance at all times. We monitor the noise levels on the primary stages, and we have remote monitoring undertaken throughout the event, continuously checking levels and also responding to any complaints. All our monitoring equipment would be compliant to Class 1 of British Standard 61672, and so to make sure we're monitoring and complying with the levels, as well as sticking to the numbers and the limits, we undertake subjective assessments on the tonal and frequency-based elements of the music. And our guys would work with the sound engineers at the stages to make any adjustments to levels, whether that's to comply with the numbers or to change the tonal content, frequency content, if we were to judge that that was having a detrimental impact on residents.
If we let the speakers carry on, we'll get your chance.
As well, there'll be a full traffic management plan in place as per the supply drawings. That will include but not be limited to cones and signage to prevent event attendees parking in all residential areas from Barton Road through Grantchester Road down to the Bluebell Inn. A dedicated pick-up and drop-off will be in place inside the rugby club boundary. The use of a second gate will be implemented to create a one-way flow to ease the movement of traffic and also make it much safer at that moment. Some further measures agreed at a residents' liaison meeting with regards to traffic. No parking cones and signage will be in place on the full length of Grantchester Road down to the Bluebell Inn to ensure people aren't parking on verges, blocking any potential blue light routes. And also we will implement on egress a one-way flow, so all vehicles leaving the rugby club will be directed right, so south through Grantchester and not towards Barton Road, just to eliminate or alleviate any potential traffic management build-up. That's everything for now.
Sorry to interrupt you. Can you just backpedal a couple of words? So rather than going to Barton Road, what was the...
Head south towards Grantchester Village and towards the Blue
Okay,
Line.
thank you. I'll just
follow
miss that word. Thank
follow that
you.
loop. So that's basically the summation of our current application.
Not yet.
Okay, any questions just at this time? No, I'll reserve my questions after we've heard from the public. Okay, thank you for that. Officers have any questions? Okay, so
Excuse me, are we allowed to ask questions?
not just at this point. Let's hear from you one at a time and see where we go from there. Well, because you can see what happened, can't you? There's lots of you here, and I can see that sort of getting away from me, and I'm not going to let that happen. So if we go from this lady here, and if you'd be kind enough when you do speak, if you could just, you don't have to stand up or anything, but just to press the button on the microphone, just state your name, mostly so that minutes can be taken, and make your statement there. Ladies and gentlemen, there are a number of you. I would ask that you try hard. I know it's difficult, but not to repeat each other, something that's already been said. Otherwise, we'll have sort of the same conversations. So we appreciate your cooperation on that. So, please.
Hello, my name is Natasha Suter. Who exactly will be approving, or who is responsible for approving the license? The three of you. Okay, I just wanted to be clarified on that. Okay, so I strongly object to the license application under prevention of public nuisance, all 4 points. Number 1, prevention of crime and disorder. Number 2, Public safety, especially traffic. It's impossible for cars to get in and out, especially emergency vehicles. I mean, like my family and neighbours and everything. Prevention of public nuisance, the protection of children from harm. I would also like to add senior citizens to this list. There are many fragile elderly people living in this neighbourhood. I myself am in my 60s and sometimes need help from my family, and it was impossible for them to come to my house. I feel that the way the license was granted in the past, and even this time, is unacceptable. When an application has been made, all residents should be notified by letter immediately, as they are about a building being reconstructed or anything, and this has far more impact than that. And this should be done at the applicant's expense. I was informed post-event by very efficient Councillor Hugh Clough, who I'm very grateful to. Unfortunately, I don't play rugby, and as you may guess, most of us do not play rugby either. The gate is closed, so there is no access for us to just walk through the rugby club field. So I do not go that way, so I did not, unfortunately, notice the tiny little blue notice on the gate until, well, whatever. My permanent home has been at the same house on Grantchester Road since 1974. I am an artist and private tutor, working mostly from home. My family and I chose this area of Cambridge because it is a quiet and peaceful area. I am therefore distraught at the horrific music festivals. These should be held far from a city so the noise does not disturb the people around. I'm usually in bed by 9 p.m. and the terrible noise going on until 11 p.m. and the thousands of noisy drunks walking past my house way past 11 p.m. disrupts my sleeping pattern for days, stops me from working, prevents me from working and resting in my garden. Part of my work is in my garden. The noise levels in the afternoon and evening I felt as a physical attack, leaving me traumatized for a long time. I'm still traumatized. This is why I laughed about the noise levels. I really felt it as a very physical attack. It wasn't just ears, but it was just, you can't escape from it in the house. The whole house just shakes. I'm happy for CRUFC hiring the place out for filming, but music festivals should be banned in Newnham, originally a quiet residential area for academic study. During the festival in August of last year, thousands of people streamed past my house from Selwyn Road and along Grantchester Road. My house is opposite Selwyn Road. The numbers were terrifying, making it difficult to get through on a bicycle and impossible for my family to visit by car. The drunken thousands returning from the festival urinated in my front garden, trampled my plants, left litter, and their noise continued long past the end of the festival. But it was the noise that was the worst and has left me traumatized to this day. I would like to ask the licensing committee, would you be willing to tolerate such a disturbance? Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you for that. Thank you for being succinct in that. That's fine. Please, our next speaker. Thank you.
My name is Jane Langley. I have lived in Selwyn Road since 1981. So I'm extremely familiar with the area. Before I come to my objections, I would like to ask each of the applicants and each of you a couple of questions. The questions are these.
Sorry, you can't be
I can't ask
asking the
right.
applicants.
Let me
You can ask
right,
us if
fine,
you want
it's
to.
okay.
I'm
happy to formulate it in another way.
Let me finish.
I will raise it as
Let me
objections.
finish. Let me finish.
Yeah, go on.
You're okay to, if you want to ask us questions, quite happy with that. But rather than ask the applicants, because if everybody does that, then it's going to get rather out of hand. But
Right,
you're quite
fine.
welcome to ask the councillors questions, and we will answer as well as we can.
Excellent, wonderful, thank you. I am wondering when each of you visited Newnham, visited the rugby club, and what impression you have, or indeed not just impression, but clear knowledge of the demographic. This is a very quiet residential area, and I'm not going to repeat what my neighbour and friend Natasha said. I note in one of these voluminous pieces of paper that you've sheaves with which you've kindly equipped us, that you say there was no representation following the event. I had no information whatsoever about where to whom to make representation. There were telephone numbers, I believe. There was no answer. The noise was simply outrageous. No, it was far louder than any noise, and I'm using the word noise, not music, deliberately. It was far louder than any kind of noise that I would have in my house. And let me just say, this may mark me down as a mad person. I happen to be the mother of 7 children and 10 grandchildren, but they too, and sometimes their taste in music differs from my own, they do not have music of the enormous volume that poured from the rugby club last year. I am wondering also how many of you have lain in bed while there are people swearing, vomiting, peeing late at night up and down the road. Now, re-access, and this is a really important point, not only could people not cycle up and down Selwyn Road or Fulbrook Road or Grantchester Road, but it would really have been impossible if any of us had needed an ambulance or a visit from a doctor. It would have been utterly and completely impossible. Such were the crowds. So the point about public safety, I would strongly like to question. There is absolutely no comparison between the rugby club and the junction, and indeed there are other sites where these kind of events can be held. I do realise that what really is happening is that the rugby club is being used as a cash cow. I'm quite aware that yours is a profit motive. I am not knocking that, but I am saying that this is an entirely inappropriate place to hold this. Otherwise, I simply wish to endorse everything that my neighbour Natasha has said, and to object in the strongest possible terms to the granting of any licence for noise of this level. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you for that. Yeah, that's, of course you can. Yeah, absolutely. We can, yeah, why not? That's fine. Yeah. Have you got a response? Yeah, why not?
Hello, just to perhaps reassure you, I've lived in Cambridge since 2000, 25 years, and I know Newnham well, I know Grantchester well. I'm afraid I do not know the Cambridge Rugby Club well. In fact, I've never been there. I'm ward councillor for Romsey, which is quite a busy city area, and I grew up in East London, so I am well aware of these sort of issues that you're showing concern about. Okay.
I also am pretty familiar with the Newnham area and that area in particular. But again, I've also never entered the rugby club.
I'd like to know when you were last there.
I certainly know where it is. I've driven along that road many times. Never been into the rugby club. However, I do know where it is. I do know the layout, and Newnham, like most of us.
I'm interested in specifics. dates, times, whom you
Couldn't
met.
tell you what
I'm
date,
not
no
interested
idea.
in your general visits. It's important to be specific.
Okay. So I have
It
a
is
good,
important to be specific. You
I
know,
have a
you
good
need
friend who
absolute
lives.
evidence.
Would you like to listen to the answer, please?
Oh.
I have a good friend who lives in Grantchester. I frequently cycle
Yeah, I did hear
from
you.
the city. So the last time I visited was early autumn.
Okay, thank you very much.
Certainly not this year. Other than that, I couldn't tell you. I don't think it's relevant.
You weren't, was anybody there during the event last year? At 11 o'clock at night? So you didn't have direct experience of that event last year during
Okay,
the night?
I think you've made your presentation. You asked your question. We've answered you. So
Okay,
can we
thank
move to
you
the next
very
speaker,
much.
please?
I hope I made the point.
I'm happy to answer that. Yes, we were there and have been since 2023. I've probably first visited the rugby club 2022 and have been there perhaps 5 times, including, well, that's more than 1 day per time, multiple hours per day. So yeah, quite familiar, as is Ashley, as is Richard.
Excellent, but you were not there during the event.
Next speaker, please. Thank you.
I was there during the event.
He was there, he said he was there. That's okay, he's deaf.
Yeah, please carry on.
My name is Ratna Beresford. I'm lucky enough to have been able to take a morning off work to be here. And I know neighbours who would have liked to be here but can't be because of work. I would like to say I like concerts, I like beer, sausages, rugby, people having fun. I like all that. But however, for this application, I need to consider the impact on my children, my teenage children who'll be taking exams around that time. They are already heavily impacted by the mid-June events. So as well as the loud music until 11 p.m., there were also streams of people till much later shouting obscenities along our road. So that was not nice for our children. And earlier in the evening, my son was coming from a friend's house and he was really intimidated by the streams of people in big groups walking along our road. I would also like to say something on behalf of younger children, because I know that my children were very much impacted by this kind of event when they were younger. Even earlier in the evening, because they tend to go to bed earlier. So as I do myself. So yeah, strong objection. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just switch your microphone off, would you please? Thank you very much. And next speaker, please.
Can you hear me now? My name is Lorraine Cunningham, and I am a resident of Fulbrook Road. I also represent the residents of Fulbrook Road in conversations with the rugby club regarding events. I've been asked to speak on behalf of 2 of my neighbours who can't be here. I will edit their objections to cut out things that have already been covered. But the first one is from one of my neighbours who repeats the point of it being a quiet residential semi-rural environment, but adds to it that the landscape is completely flat around there. There are few trees or hedges, and any sound travels very clearly to our houses, which are very close to the ground. There's nothing to insulate it at all. Events held on an open stage or intense sound like they're in our back gardens. Bass sounds in particular can reverberate very strongly. Sound checks start early in the day, and the music then plays continuously at volume throughout. We feel particularly sorry for our elderly neighbours, of which there are a great number in Fulbrook Road, the unwell and families with young children who need to sleep. There is no escape. And although there is a person taking responsibility and there is a contact line, we've found that whilst we contact them and request a sound check which leads to a dulling of the volume, it often drifts up again within the hour. It's not just a question of sound levels in decibels, but of what, sorry, this is taken from the council's webpage. My neighbour has quoted this. It's not just a question of sound levels in decibels, but of what is acceptable to the average person, and what one person considers unacceptable may not seem reasonable to somebody else. Given the context of the local environment, the level of music played continuously for 6 hours on the Friday, immediately followed by another 11 hours on the Saturday, is unacceptable. As the council no longer operates a noise monitoring service, there's no means of independent verification on the day, and it's on the day that we're suffering. There is no effective means of enforcement if agreed sound levels are exceeded and cause a public nuisance, so we urge you to modify the number of nighttime hours allowed. Secondly, there is a serious risk to public safety with regard to the management of the car traffic attracted by these events. Now, I believe, Richard, at our meeting you said that there would be parking on site for this event, which there hasn't been in previous events. There is a concern about that number of cars entering and leaving the site and the safety with that. There's only one single width access egress point into the site, directly onto a narrow country road, which you will know if you've driven through from Grantchester. You'll also know that there are cars parked both sides, effectively turning Grantchester Road into a single lane from the rugby club down to Barton Road. Stewards, I believe, have no legal power to enforce suggestions, so whilst I know that attempts were made last year for the stewards to direct people right to Grantchester, unfortunately with no legal power they weren't able to do that. There was a lot of congestion, therefore, on Grantchester Road, and it was quite dangerous. There were taxi drivers who caused considerable chaos, roadblocks in the area last year by dropping off and collecting people, doing U-turns back up to the Barton Road. Stewards had no power over that, not from what we could see anyway. They weren't able to do anything about that. It took almost an hour for customers to leave, contributing significantly to public nuisance beyond the permitted licensing hours. Now, maybe parking on site, if that's what's planned this year, will create its own problems. Maybe it will alleviate all that traffic on Grantchester Road as drivers come and pick up and drop off. Maybe that will be alleviated, but then we've got a very, very narrow single access egress and entry onto the club. There is another smaller road further down, but this is a very narrow road that we're talking about here. It's a lot of traffic. My second neighbour, sorry, there's two neighbours and then myself. My wife and I are close neighbours and want to object on the grounds of prevention of public nuisance. Our garden's back onto the rugby club and we have been very supportive of the club and we want it to succeed, which most of us on Fallbrook Road do. We knew when we bought our house as a rugby club, we're not trying to be negative, we're just trying to get a balance. So my neighbour says, we understand that occasional summer events can help with funding, but the noise during an event is very intrusive and makes our home and garden very unpleasant. The sound comes in both from the back directly and the front bouncing off the houses opposite. There is no escape. My wife suffers from migraines and that's very likely to bring on a migraine. And I'd like to refer the panel to the evidence that I put forward. There's a small pack, I believe. Number 5 is research published last year by a professor of audiology at the University of British Columbia, which states that noise can have adverse effects, including anxiety, disturbed sleep, high blood pressure, and headaches. So to have loud and often rhythmic noise like this with a pulsating bass beat for prolonged hours on 2 consecutive days will make our home very hard to live in over that weekend. And if this is further extended in 2026, it will have an even greater damaging effect. We do therefore strongly object to this extension of the licence. And finally, my own objection. I do support CRUFC in its needs to raise funds. I also appreciated Ashley Ramian from Live Tour Promotions last year making time to meet with us and responding to our concerns. I did feel that they did everything they could to organise things, and I know a lot of people, including myself, I went to one of the events, did enjoy the events. However, 2 events on consecutive days was stressful for local residents, and the thought of another weekend of loud music just 3 weeks later is going to be very unpleasant. Again, if I can refer to number 4 of my evidence, the Institute of Acoustics says a smaller number of concerts per year has been reported as being the maximum tolerable. I'm also concerned about the specific nature of this new event and the impact it will have on local residents. It's going to be DJs with recorded club music from the 80s and 90s, and this can include electronic repetitive beats, very heavy bass. The DJ will play the tracks back to back. It all sounds really relentless in terms of noise and distressing for local residents, especially those of us in Fulbrook Road who back onto the ground. If I can refer to evidence number 2, there's a document called The Effect of Bass Beats on Individuals in the Journal of Low Frequency Noise and Vibration. Research has shown that noise containing a large amount of energy at lower frequency, and we're talking here about the bass beats in the music, is more annoying than the same sound pressure level. I'd also like to cite the Institute of Acoustics findings about low-level frequency negatively impacting local residents, even where the higher frequency music isn't audible, which means that at a given distance, the music may not be clearly audible, but the low frequency beats will. In 2026, we could potentially be facing 3 consecutive days in mid-June and 2 more in July, and this is going to have a negative effect on the well-being of many local residents. I'd like to refer you to the Code of Practice, which limits these music events to between 1 and 3 days, and also to the Institute of Acoustics statement that a fair balance has to be made between the rights of people to enjoy themselves at these festivals and the rights of people not to be unduly disturbed. And I think this is the issue here. As I've said, I'm also concerned about the impact of so many cars entering and leaving the ground. I'm unaware of any prior event at the rugby club where up to 5,000 people, which is the projected numbers in 2026, are invited to park in the rugby grounds, and I'm very concerned about how that can be managed. Previous music events have not allowed parking on site, and the club matches have an average of only 800 spectators per game. We're talking about a massive increase, times 6 if we're going to get up to 5,000 people. I know they don't all drive, but then nor do all the people going to rugby matches. So whilst I appreciate that Cambridge Rugby Union Club has to find ways to fund itself, and I support them in principle, I would ask that they find alternative funding sources that don't impact so unpleasantly on local residences. And finally, this event is targeting adults only, and by nature will be far more unpleasant than anything we've experienced before because they've been more family. Club music is very high energy with repetitive sounds. The DJ's job is to sustain the high energy, and the incorporation of dance performances is indicative of club music and raves of the 1990s. So I don't know what's planned, but I would be interested to hear exactly what kind of music this will be. The repetitive nature of the music will be particularly distressing on local residents, and especially given the demographics, I don't know about Selwyn and Grantchester, but certainly Fulbrook Road has almost 50% of residents over 60 and a significant number over 80. This application is not appropriate for the rugby club location so close to residential houses in a quiet area of the city. The flat landscape affords little in the way of trees to attenuate the sound, and the Institute of Acoustic recognises that the low-frequency sounds characteristic of such a music event are not attenuated in the same way as higher frequency sound, and there has been concern by the medical professions for some time that the A-weighted level underestimates the effects of low-frequency noise, leading to annoyance and stress, particularly to sensitive people in their homes. I would finally add that the number of objections to this proposal indicates that local residents have reached their tolerance levels with the 2 days already of outdoor music in a year. Therefore, I would respectfully refer you once again to the guidelines of 1 to 3 days per year in the code, and actually the maximum tolerable level being 2, and I would ask you to reject this application.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Councillor Clough, you're next. Thank you so much.
Yes. Would it be possible for me to have the map, this map on the screen? If I come round and point to.
I'm reliably informed it will.
Thank you. Well, first of all, can I say that in speaking, I thank you for the opportunity to address the panel. I'm speaking today in 3 different capacities. Firstly, on behalf of 3 residents who've asked me to represent them at the hearing. Secondly, on behalf of our household, myself and my wife, who live on the south side of Fulbrook Road and will be directly and substantially impacted if this licence is granted. And third, on behalf of residents generally, as one of the ward councillors for Newnham. Firstly, in terms of background and timeline, the two sets of weekend music events referred to by residents is covered in my detailed representation on pages 50 to 55 on the agenda pack. I hope this has provided a good overview to the concerns now raised by residents about this licence application. The next thing is location map. I think it will be useful to explain the layout of the rugby club in relation to the neighbouring roads and streets. This can be seen either on the hard copy map, can be seen on the Google Rugby Club settings screen print, which also supplements the satellite style maps in the two reports from F1 Acoustics, which were provided to the panel and the objectors on Friday. Could I go walk around and point some roads out on the map?
Yeah, of course you can. The only thing is, of course, that without the microphone, you won't be heard outside the room. So anybody that's listening online won't be able to hear you. So that's the only, you'll know that from council meetings. But yeah, of course you can go to the screen. Whether the councillor can take that microphone with him.
I'll try. Well, if you look at, okay, I'll try and do it without that.
Or just take.
I'll do the narrative.
If it will work taking it with you, I don't know if it will,
Yeah.
but if you can just take it with you, then they'll be able to hear you.
Okay. No, Natasha, I'll come and do it over there. Yeah, thanks.
Dean, can I hold something for you? How about if I hold the microphone for
Yeah.
you?
Okay.
Shall I hold this for you?
So, firstly, could I point out? Well, I'll just hold it here. Yeah, that's fine. First of all, could I point out that the stage area for the events is located down here, which is in the southeast corner of the rugby club ground. These are the two rugby club fields here. So the stage area is located here, and the orientation of the stage means that obviously it's at probably about 3 meters. The sound producing out is above the ground. So clearly, the bulk of the sound will also come out that way. But it's also very clear that right. Let me point out. Oh, so on here we have at the top we've got Barton Road. This is the main access route for people coming in from the town, either by taxi, e-scooter, or by bicycle. And at this point here, they either go down King's Road to join Selwyn Road, which is where we've heard the reports of all the disturbance, or they come along here down Grantchester Road to then enter the small entrance into the rugby club here. But I think, so yes, I've covered King's Road, which is that small cut down there, and that's the route along there. Right, and then we have Fulbrook Road, which is on the northern edge of the rugby club, and obviously these houses along here. So I think so I think the point I wanted to make is that, in fact, what I hadn't realised before when we were dealing with this last year, in fact, there's a back arc of sound which comes out from the stage, so that it's not only just impacting us down here in Fulbrook Road, but also in Selwyn Road. And indeed, as you can see, it's very open, and it's actually coming out into this area down here. And we certainly had reports when I talked to Councillor Glasberg, who lives in Elderslie Avenue. She said that, in fact, she heard the noise very clearly and had a number of complaints from her neighbours. So I think the main point I'm trying to make is that this is the radial arc of the sound travels all the way across, not just into Fulbrook Road, but into Selwyn Road and all of this area down here. But we don't yet know the extent of the concerns because we haven't contacted people systematically down there.
Chair, could I just very briefly interject?
Okay. Right, so can I continue? Yeah? Yeah, okay. So the 2nd and 3rd of August was at the height of summer, when people were out in their gardens relaxing and taking their quiet enjoyment of their gardens and outdoor space. As I said, flat area where sound travels. Windows are open for ventilation, particularly all residents on the south side of Fulbrook Road will have been heavily impacted. If not enjoying the sound, would have been obliged to close windows and reach to the north sides of the house. So I've been asked to make, so moving on to my, the representations that I've been asked to make. I've been asked to, I've got 3 residents who have asked me specifically to speak on their behalf. From a lady called Lucy Emerton, who lives in Croft Gate. Her representation is at page 39 of the agenda pack, and she cites the issue of prevention of public nuisance. The Cambridge Rugby Union current commercial entertainment has caused considerable protracted noise disturbance to surrounding residents, and as a result, the attendees leaving the events late at night result in significant traffic disruptions and general disruption and distress. Particularly for elderly residents, including increasing the length, frequency and capacity.
We'll try and save you a bit of time. In fact, the panel have read all those representations.
Okay, that's fine, I'll do that. Okay,
That'll save you a bit of time.
Yeah, okay, so I'll move on then. The next resident who's asked me to represent him is Neil Peterson. His name shows Lewis Peterson. His representation is on page 40. It's the bottom representation there, and he's, you know.
Yeah,
and then,
got that. Thank you.
And then finally, John Kendall. I'm not quite sure which his representation is on here, so I will, if I may, just read out what he sent me to in an email. Because you know, when he puts it onto the website, you don't get you just get a little block comes up. It doesn't tell you, it doesn't send you back what you put in. Basically, what I said in my objection was that the scale of the proposed event was inappropriate to a quiet residential area and would create a public nuisance, particularly with excessive noise. And also granting a license would create a precedent for larger and more frequent events in the future. And so I've also was particularly struck, and this is talking about the residents' concerns in general, by an email from one resident. I'm not sure they put a representation in. He was particularly concerned about Selwyn Road being blocked off, and he said last year on 2 nights, there was a continuous procession of people from 11 p.m. until 3 a.m. walking down the street. Generally drunk and loud, they caused, on top of the fear and alarm for the elderly and people with young children, damage to properties and gardens. Several bins were overturned, alleyways and lawns were used as lavatory, wing mirrors were broken off 2 cars, and a large number of empty bottles left in the road or on pavements. It is frightening lying awake in the middle of the night, awaiting the sound of breaking glass. I spoke to his wife a few days ago, and she said they were watching people going down Selwyn Road the earlier part of the evening, preloading on vodka. They then witnessed a group returning to a car which had been parked in Selwyn Road, probably the worse for wear. When the group asked the driver if he was fit to drive, he said, "No, I'm just got in and drove away." So there's that aspect. As a household, we found the sound volume on the second night of the 8th of July totally unacceptable, which is why I submitted a complaint via the council website, and why, when the letter drop for the 2nd and 3rd of August last year arrived, it was clear to me that urgent action was needed to be taken. I'm grateful to the help of Lorraine Cunningham in liaising with Live Tour Promotions and the Rugby Club, and also for the engagement of the Environmental Health Officer with Live Tour Promotions before the event. It is worth noting that if you look at the report from F1 Acoustic Consultants, that actually the app that we downloaded in order to monitor this has actually produced results which are very similar. For the final period of the Friday night, F1 Acoustics have declared the result as 64.2 decibels, The data downloaded from my phone was 64.5 decibels. So, you know, we do accept that, you know, in line with they probably met their requirements for the code of practice not to exceed 65 decibels 1 metre from the back of the house. All right, so it is also useful, it's also useful that F1 Acoustic on page 4 of the Cambridge Day Festival Management Plan have endorsed my reference to the Code of Practice on Environmental Noise Control at Concerts. Googling Code of Practice and Noise Control at Concerts brings up a series of useful links where this document is posted on professional and local websites. For example, Trafford Council, Institute of Acoustics, as mentioned before, Health and Safety Executive, London Borough of Waltham Forest, Birmingham City Council, Manchester City Council, and Telford and Wrekin Council. So it appears to be a widely accepted industry standard which is entirely applicable to this occasion. Table 1, page 6, row 2, states the limit of 1 to 3 concerts a day per year in other urban and rural venues. We were given an assurance on the Zoom call with Live Tour Promotions last year on the 29th of July that they were not planning more than 1 weekend a year. So bearing in mind that the Code of Practice, Laurie and I concluded that this was likely to be what we would have to put up with going forward. So we relayed this assurance in good faith to Fulbrook Road residents, along with the information about the sound test that that was occurring and the monitoring we were going to be doing. And so the marshalling off of Fulbrook Road was also provided by Live Tour Promotions, and we arranged for people to use copies of the residence permits to show them at the barrier. And emails were, residents were emailed with a full update because the noise level was clearly far better than previous years, and that their representatives were doing their best in a challenging situation. So what I'm really saying is that if, you know, the fact that in the noise report it says there were no complaints, that is because the people on Fulbrook Road were, you know, knew that we were doing our best. They, you know, and therefore they would have seen no occasion to complain. But it's only when this current license application was submitted and we contacted Neighbourhood Roads that the full extent of the upset in the neighbouring roads has come out, as evidenced by the 24 representations. While the noise levels of the weekend of the 2nd and 3rd of August may have stayed within the 65 decibel limit, it is clear from summary of complaints on page 54 of and listing these complaints against the licensing objective, that you know, Live Tour Promotions has not met the licensing objecting tests, and you know, this matter needs to be addressed. But the question today is how applicable is the body of evidence that we're hearing presented today to this separate license? I would suggest that it is directly relevant for a number of reasons. Paragraph 4.3 of the Code of Practice talks about assessing the viability of a location and states that research shows that music noise level in the audience by the mixer position at pop concerts is typically 100 dBA, and that levels below 95 dBA will be unlikely to provide satisfactory entertainment for the audience. Appendix B of the sound control, post-event sound control report for the 2nd and 3rd of August shows 100 dBA being delivered at the stage. This is arriving at the backs of the houses on Fulbrook Road at just below 65 dBA. It may be less than 65 dBA on Silwan Road, but is probably not significantly different. The F1 Acoustics Management Plan for this license has the same 65 dBA limit for 5th of July 25. While being within the Code of Practice, it is clear from
I ask you to come to a close now, but all of this, just about all of this is in the report anyway, which we've already read. So if you can just come to your closing remarks, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, I'll do my best with, yes. It is clear from that it's unacceptable residents with small children trying to settle them down to sleep, elderly people, those suffering from migraines, families with youngsters studying for critical exams. This is the time of year when windows have to be kept open for ventilation. Many of the houses in direct line of the sound are relatively small, original working family houses. Any quiet time in the summer is precious. Having one event a year organised by Live Talk is simply enough. There are other events that have been occurring on this rugby ground which are also causing disturbance. 2 concert days a year is sufficient, while another technically could be added within the Code of Practice. The Code of Practice gives 1 to 3. 2 is enough, and there is no obligation to go to 3. I've referred to preloading on the way, and it is clear these events are party time events. People are out to have a good time. This is bringing a drinking and possibly other culture, drug culture, into direct conflict with residents who are entitled to enjoy quiet enjoyment of their summer weekend. While other issues around public safety and transport are compounded by the nature of the road network. Selwyn Road in particular is a problem because people were parking there and heading out to the venue and entering incorrectly from the Grantchester Road end and blocking the road completely. Taxi drivers were also reluctant to get into the slow transit through the pickup areas. The conclusion has to be the rugby club is not the right location for this type of festival Ibiza rave event. It is on the edge of a sensitive residential area with a cramped road network. It will inevitably breach the licensing objectives, and I would ask the panel to reject the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. We have still 4 more speakers to go. So what I propose to do is when we get to the end of the public speaking, we'll have a 5-minute break, unless you want one now. Your choice. Everybody happy to carry on? Okay. Okay, fine. Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine. Let's take a 5 minutes now then, in that case.
Thanks, Mark.
9:30, but there you go. If we'd like to resume public speakers, that'd be great. Thank you very much.
Hello, everybody. My name is Boz Kempsky. I live on the side of Fulbrook Road that backs onto the rugby field. But by virtue of its name, the rugby club is a venue to host rugby matches. It's never been designed to be a music festival venue. Of course, other sporting venues are welcome, such as the previously held volleyball tournaments and that sort of thing. It may interest you to know that another event which took place shortly after we moved to Fulbrook Road in 1984 was sheep grazing on the pitch. That kind of thing is very welcome. It's simply not appropriate for the rugby club to be used for this type of proposed event in terms of noise, crowd and traffic management, provision of toilet facilities. Such events are normally held in areas such as stately homes or farms, and not quiet residential areas such as the ones that we live in. I'm not opposed at all to music festivals. In fact, I'm a regular music festival attendee. I've been going to WOMAD for the last 12 years. So I'm not against music festivals per se. It's just where they're located and the effects that they generate. Traffic control cannot be effectively maintained, let alone processing the large number of attendees. You have to process these people as they come into the venue, and 5,000 of them is going to cause a massive problem. So the surrounding area is just not geographically appropriate to cater for the volume of traffic generated by those attending and the volume of people. I'm certainly fearful that this is a precedent for the future, that these events will multiply. Already, we note that the intention is to double the number of festival goers in 2026. And the event isn't just confined to 1 or 2 days. There's all the disruption resulting from setting up and taking down these large-scale events, which will add days either side. I was particularly frightened to hear that this is not going to be a family event either, and this worries me greatly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Jennifer Warburton, and I am a resident of Fulbrook Road. I wanted to say, really, I wanted to give a personal account of what happened to me on that weekend. On the Friday, my husband and I could not hear the radio in our house, and we couldn't have a normal conversation. We couldn't have the television on. My husband is a writer, has deadlines, and works over the weekend. Work, as I know, I think Nicola had said, work was impossible for us in our house. We actually phoned a couple of hotels to see whether we could move out. We were prepared to pay for that because neither of us could work. It was a weekend in Cambridge in July, and that meant there were no hotels. We did think, should we go to Ely? We were that desperate. That was on the Friday. On the Saturday, I was innocently, I think, going to cycle down Selwyn Road to go to an event in Cambridge. Excuse me, I have a cold, I'm sorry. I was going to do that. I got to the top of Fulbrook Road, went into Selwyn Road, and was absolutely horrified. It was wall to wall, if that's the phrase, from the houses, from the walls of the houses in Selwyn Road, a very narrow one-way road, street, to the pavement, the other side. It was wall-to-wall people. They must have been 7 or 8, and they were coming towards me because they were coming more or less simultaneously from coaches that dropped them in Barton Road. They were drinking, shouting, and it's not fair to say aggressive, but I felt threatened. I don't think it's fair to call them aggressive, but I felt threatened because they were just moving steadily along the road. A taxi driver who dropped people presumably in Grantchester Road, was in Selwyn Road, and he was going in the wrong direction. And he had the window down, and I was by the side of him, and I said, "This is a one-way street. You're going down the wrong way." He said, "What can I do?" He said, "I can't turn round, can I? I'll kill people." And so he was steadily making his way, the wrong way, down the street with this crush of people coming towards him. That was what was frightening. I couldn't push my bike. I didn't know what to do. I just stood still because I'd been in a situation like that in London before, in Hyde Park, where they had put the portcullises down and closed the underground, and a crush of people was coming towards me then, and they were going to be stopped by the portcullis. That was very frightening, and my husband and I had to do something about that. And we climbed onto sort of ramparts and shouted to everyone to get back. It brought back that feeling of panic. So I would just like to say that they were my personal experiences, not being able to hear our own radio, not being able to have a proper conversation in our own home. Somebody said that it was inescapable, and the noise was inescapable. There was nowhere to go in our house. All the windows were closed. You could feel it vibrating on the windows. So I thought that was unacceptable. The fact that we were that desperate that we thought we would get a hotel. We've also thought that for this year's, that we would move out. And I would just like to say how frightening it was in Selwyn Road. There was, it seemed to me, no attempt at marshalling this, supervising it, or monitoring it or in any way at all. That may be the case this year, I don't know, but it was still a very frightening experience. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Our last speaker. Thank you so much.
Good morning. Yes, I'm the last speaker, so I'll try and keep it brief. I'm Simon Pattinson. I live at the end of Selwyn Road, close to the junction with Grantchester Road. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my wife, particularly the family. And I also have an allotment at the end of Fulbrook Road, so I'm often up and down that area. And last year I did actually visit the event. I had a complimentary ticket, and I went to one of the days for half an hour. It was a free will choice. If I went back to my house, I could listen for free. I wouldn't choose to pay to go in, but yeah, everyone to their own. If I want to listen to free, I can just sit in my back garden. If I want to get away from it, well, I can't, because even in the house you can hear it. I'm actually this year investing in triple glazing at the back of the house. Okay, so a lot of people have mentioned the noise issue and gone through that in some detail, so I'll skip that. I'd like to sort of emphasize a bit more about the infrastructure, the roads, Grantchester, Selwyn, Fullbrook. These are very narrow residential roads. There's a lot of on-street parking. Even just local things can cause congestion, but we cope with that. But the bigger events, the rugby, this sort of thing, it only takes 20 cars in the Grantchester Road to go into gridlock. We're talking about huge numbers of pedestrians and cyclists and the rest for these events. And I think one of the things that concerns me particularly, I concur with all the comments that have been made down here, is the risk that with the scale of the event in such an unsuitable area, if there is an incident, nobody will be able to get through. I mean, it will be just gridlocked. And I wonder if there's not, we should be thinking a little bit of the duty of care, because if, God forbid, if there is an incident, what are you going to do? I suppose you could land the air ambulance on the rugby field, but anyway, that's my concern, is there is a real risk, especially as they scale up these events to much bigger things. Thank you.
Thank you very much for all of you who have brought your points to the committee, and I know these things can be quite difficult to come here and do that, so thank you very much, and it's useful to listen firsthand to everyone. So what we're going to do now is that there won't be cross-examination, for want of a better word, but I would like the applicants to be able to respond to some of those points. But, ladies and gentlemen, let me be clear, what we don't want to be doing is to have a cross-examination situation, because that is not what this hearing's all about. So you've all had quite a long time to be able to put your points forward. So what we want to hear is, because I'm sure that the applicant's representatives will have made extensive notes and will be able to respond to your questions. So I think it's quite important that they get to respond to your questions, because basically that's who you're asking them from, the questions to. We would like to hear what their responses are. Having done that, then if we still have any questions which we wish the applicants to answer, then we may ask members of the public for perhaps points of clarification, but we won't be questioning you either. So we may ask for a point of clarification. Somebody may wish to be doing that, but that's all we will do. We won't be expecting you to have a rapport with us either. That way it's fair to everyone. So just to clarify that, the applicants will now respond to those questions, and please let them respond without interruption. They've done that, they only interrupted you once, and I stopped that, and I will do the same. So please let them respond, and then you still may have another chance. Let's see how it pans out from there. They may respond to all your questions adequately. They may not be the answers you require, but as long as you get the answers, then once we will ask some questions, and then we'll go around the room and so we will go from there. Does that all sound okay for everyone? Thank you so much. Over to your good selves.
Thanks very much, Chair. Whilst I appreciate numerous references to previous years and previous events, I'm mindful today we're here to discuss a new application for a new premises licence based upon the plans submitted and the application submitted. I'll try to focus on that, but there are a number of points that I will wish to clarify with regards to previous years that I personally believe just to be false. With regards to the application for this premises licence, all advertising requirements were fully met. It says that in the initial brief. Numerous blue signs were posted. A newspaper advert was placed as per requirements. We did also, following the application, undertake a liaison meeting with residents. So to say people weren't aware, I'm afraid I can't accept that.
I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to interrupt. When can I say something about something that I think is wrong?
We're listening to the presentation. You may or may not agree. Don't worry about that. We want to hear from the applicant now. So now you see why I said what I did, because we're all going to be here a very long time, and we've heard a lot of evidence so far. So this is their turn to respond to you. You may or may not agree with those responses, but then in the end, that will be for us to actually decide the outcome of this hearing anyway. So just let them respond uninterrupted as they did for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to add, I guess, further clarity, yes. Yes, there is an application date, but the consultation period is 28 days to allow for consultation with whether it's responsible authorities or residents, and the consultation with residents did happen within that period, well in advance of people being able to place their representation. I think maybe 2 weeks before that. Just to address some talk about sound and sound systems and arcs of noise. Again, during the discussion with the maps, it was referred to a previous, an existing license, not this premises license, and the plans for the sound there. The direction was completely different. The direction will be south by southwest as opposed to west northwest. It's a directional sound system with a cardioid array, which is designed to eliminate any sound projection backwards from the stage. So in essence, there will be no sound projection heading north towards Fulbrook Road, sorry. A number of, again, referring to a previous event, a number of claims made about times of people walking through. At one point, it was claimed 3 a.m. We have event logs stating the latest for 2024 was 23:25, that the area was clear, not the rugby club, the area, and stewards out on Grantchester Road and Fulbrook Road were stood down at that time because people had left the area. I appreciate everyone's concerns about traffic management. There is an extensive traffic management plan in place. We will be seeking to apply for a TTRO, so a temporary traffic road order, to implement a one-way system to prevent any blocking of roads, to ensure a free-flowing highway. At previous events, it was mentioned stewards had no power. They were fully qualified traffic management marshals with powers on the road, and that will be the case for this application. I mentioned previously there's no parking. 2023 there was parking, 2024 there was not. This year, for this particular application, we do intend to offer parking that will be ticketed and not available on a roll-up basis, and that will be set at a maximum of 600 cars. Anyone who wishes to purchase or acquire a parking ticket will be sent full maps of the ways in and out, so they're aware pre-event the correct way for that vehicle to enter and exit the premises. With regards to some noise, there's some discussion about previous events' size and how nothing of this size proposed for 2026 has happened before. Again, that's not true. The previous 2 years has been operated at a capacity of 4,999. So there is history of that happening in this location. Again, this application, 2025, I must stress, is for 2,499, which is half the amount of people that have successfully and safely been attending events at this location. 1 day as well. And just for 1 day, 1 day. With regards to noise, I will let Rupert, who is the expert, say some more on this. We appreciate the code of practices in place. It is a guidance, and it is not, the 1 to 3 days is not a limit of how many days. That is, there is a guidance limit on a decibel level for that period of time, and then the second period of time, which is 4 to 12 days, is at a lower decibel level. So it's entirely permitted for venues, locations in these kind of areas to operate more than 3 days events per calendar year. It's just that the levels will be different according to the guidance, but any levels set would be fully agreed with a noise management plan with the environmental health team well in advance of the event, not at this day. because it requires much more consultation and is a very specific level that will be set. Anything to add on that? Does that kind of cover it? Rupert's going to add a couple of bits just on that.
Yeah, so as Martin said, the Code of Practice doesn't restrict you to 3 days, it just gives guidance on levels. I'll just quickly, with regard to the low frequency, the noise management plan addresses low frequency. That's the control of it at further distances, as was alluded to, that low frequency sound travels further. And it's also controlled closer to the event, where we look at different measurement parameters. So a C-weighted level, which accounts for low frequency noise, more than an A-weighted level, which is a weighting of sound and energy in sound, which is attributed to the ear. And what we look at is the differential between those levels, which addresses that low frequency element of music. So that's all addressed in the noise management plan, which would be submitted to and agreed with the licensing authority.
Sorry, just a couple more points from me. Referring back to traffic management and the road network, I believe a number of the core issues historically may have stemmed from 2023 and not 2024. A big initiative was made to proactively manage surrounding areas, including the usage of traffic signage, as well as stewards and traffic management marshals in the surrounding area, to which I believe has been successful and will be implemented should this license be granted. I must say, we're not here to come and disturb people or be a nuisance. We offer a wide range of mitigation measures to ensure we are as good neighbours as possible and do everything we can to create as little impact to the local community. I take on board Councillor Clough's mention of Kings Road being used as a throughway. That is something we will add to our traffic management plan to prevent any vehicles heading down that way. And yeah, quite rightly, we don't want people driving down Selwyn Road. So we take that on board and we'll add that to our traffic management plan. Some mentions about, in the case of an emergency, the perceived inability for blue light access. I must disagree with that. The proposal for a one-way loop is designed partly for the safe and free-flowing movement of attendees, but more primarily is for blue light access, to ensure the roads aren't clogged, to ensure, should there be a particular emergency, we can get police, fire, ambulance to those locations. Also, the event organiser recognises his responsibility to the care of his attendees. There will be paramedics on site, fully qualified for that aspect in the rare occurrence that a medical emergency should take place, as well as all the appropriate fire management methods that should be required in the short term. One other thing that's been mentioned previously is that this is over 18s event, and some concern that that hadn't happened before. Again, that's not true. Both previous events of this nature, the Friday evenings have been 18 plus. The Saturdays have been all ages family events. So it's proven history with the measure of operating procedures we are proposing that an over 18s event can be safely run in this location, in this format, with all the measures we are proposing. Anything else? I think that might be it right now. Sorry, Chair, just 1 second.
I just wanted to add, I'm at a bit of a disadvantage because the previous events are nothing to do with me. However, I did come and meet the residents 2 weeks before the application, the deadline for representation. to speak with them about it. And the reason I went in there was to just sort of do a smaller event than what's already there. I want to make quite clear that there are events that are running for 499 there already. That's been mentioned a few times in representation, saying there isn't an event that size. That's the size of the events there already. So I've just gone in and said, look, you don't know me. I want to build a trust and rapport with the local residents. I only want to do one day and for half the number to see if we can mitigate some of these concerns. And that's why we had the meeting. I fully appreciate the comments that have been made, so I'm sitting here listening to them. But that's kind of why we went in to run, to walk before we can run, because I haven't had any prior experience on the site. The reason I've employed the guys here is because they have for 2 years, and they're for an event that's double the size and double the amount of time. So that's the reason why we had the meeting with the residents beforehand. I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much. Members, it's over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. I've got a couple of questions for you, and I've also got one for you, Luke, if that's okay. I'll come to the applicants first. So, firstly, it's just to go back to the measures you're taking for noise management and sound. You're talking about, I think, electronic measurements with the sound as it's being issued. You're not talking about baffles or anything along the field to actually stop the sound travelling, which is also often used, I think. And I don't know if you've considered that. So what I want to know is the measures that you're saying that you're putting in place, have they been tested? Have they been checked by anybody independent who's also familiar with the area to see if they will work? Have you done that at all? And the second question is, I just wonder what your motivation is for running an over 18 event rather than a family event, which does seem to have gone down much better with residents. And why, is it a financial thing or what made you choose an over 18 event? Thank you.
With regards to noise, I wouldn't say there's physical barriers as such as ways of mitigation. It is predominantly a system design and a site design, so directional things like that you can control. The equipment will be familiar to the applicant. It is his own equipment that is used in other locations. So he has vast experience of controlling and operating the equipment. Also, if we're comparing back to previous events, it seems to be the trend. It's worth noting the systems will be much smaller given the size and the layout proposed. It's proposed to have 3 quote-unquote stages. Some of these will be in tents, one will be open air. Given the small nature of the site itself, these will have to be quiet by design to stop noise bleed. But the individual systems will be tested on the day and monitored prior to opening as part of the noise management plan. Sound levels will be set pre-event and checked. With regards to over 18s, I think it's given this event has run to a similar style at the Cambridge Junction. It's just fitting that this is an over 18s event and not one for families. I think the plan would be, should this be granted and should a 2026 event happen, one day of that would be a family event. And it also comes with reduced risk in terms of the protection of children from harm, in terms of any potential issues on site. But that's mainly a choice due to previous events that have been held in the city and their desired audience rather than anything else. Did you want to add to that? Is that about right?
And I just wanted to check, because we've seemed to have had a few different examples. So the other events that are running currently or ran last year, could you just give me a rundown of the numbers that are allowed to come to those?
So the premises licence in place, which is, I think, 000926, allows 2 days over one weekend, so a Friday and a Saturday. I think it's Part A of your premises, is it Appendix 6, I believe, of the report. So that allows 2 days. The club premises certificate doesn't allow any outdoor music events. So currently there's only 2 days allowed on this premises for this type of event, but people can also put in temporary event notices if they wanted to do an event for less than 500 people, so 499 people or less, which I think has happened in the past at the premises.
We've not had anything on the scale of this one then, before?
Yes, they've had an event in 2023, which was on the Friday and Saturday night, and the same event in 2024, which was on the Friday and Saturday night, which is run under that premises licence that's attached to the appendix.
How many people attended those, please?
It was an event run by Martin was the DPS there, so he'd be able to tell you how many people attended.
Oh,
them
could you
events.
please, sorry, because I've just heard several different things. I just want it absolutely clear how many people attended in 2023 and in 2024, please.
The capacity for those events was 4,999. I can look for individual figures, but most of the days were fairly close to that. Certainly 2024, maybe 2023 was approximately, I'd have to check, between 3,000 and 4,000 per day.
No, that's all. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I have a few questions. The TRO, has that been granted? No, you've applied for that.
We haven't applied for it yet. Should the premises license be granted, that will be in the next step of the organisation.
I see.
Is applying for the TTRO as well as submitting the full event management plan documentation.
I see. Okay, thank you.
So, Chair, just to add to that, sorry, it's quite an important point. The backup plan for that is to have a CSAS operative, which they do have the powers to control traffic. We're going to have 2 of those operatives on site, so it's not just a steward; it's an actual trained traffic manager, CSAS, so that they can actually direct traffic. So I'm just saying that is part of the plan as well.
So that was the backup plan, you said?
I mean, it's just the idea is that a TTRO is the most practical plan A, but a CSAS operative, which I employ at other festivals that I do that are larger than this, they have the powers and the ability of police to stop traffic. So that's why we always employ them as the head traffic, not just stewards.
Why is that just Plan B, not part of Plan A?
Well, they're going to be there anyway, but I'm just saying that allows the scenario of if a traffic order wasn't available.
Okay, thank you. I was going to ask about the enforcement for the stewards. I mean, people don't have to obey the stewards, right? I mean, it seems they don't.
Sorry, just to come in. So the TTRO plan for this event, just so you are aware, is exactly the same as the previous 2 years from the other events, which both times have been granted by Rhodes Cambridge. And secondly, they do have the power on roads. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. So how are you going to prevent people from parking on Grantchester Road? What if you suddenly have 30 cars parked on Grantchester Road on both sides or whatever? What are you going to do about it?
So physically, there will be cones in place and signage. Secondary, it is permissible to tow people, so there will be on standby a company that would be there to tow vehicles. We'll have patrols as well to attempt to prevent that from happening. I can only say, as we're referring back all the time, there hasn't been an issue of parking on verges along that road. And the measures that have been put in place, certainly 2024, were successful.
Just to add to that, Chair, sorry, parking on site will be free for for patrons of the event. So there will really be no point where you can actually park right next to the event site on the field, next to the main festival site.
Thank you. Can I ask Luke a question? I'm also with Dinah. I'm very confused about these numbers. When I read the paperwork, it seemed that there was a much lower limit on the past 2 years, those events. And I'm hearing from the applicant that was 4,999, whereas I thought the paperwork said it was much lower than that. Could you clarify that?
The paperwork wouldn't mention the limits of that event because it's a separate event. This is dealing with a new application, and I think the only numbers referred to are in the event are the 2499 that they've proposed for 2025, which then increases to 4999 for 2026 if granted. There's no, unless it's mentioned in the Part A of the premises licence for the one that's been attached as appendices, there is no mention of the capacity limits because it's a separate event. They've just been mentioned because they take place on the same location.
Okay, I understand. Hold on a second. Councillor Clough, can I ask you a question? From the applicant, we just heard a claim that, you know, after the 2023 event, they improved their traffic control and other controls, and that was the 24 event was somehow improved. Do you agree with that?
Well, first of all, they didn't have car parking on site in the 2024 event. So people arriving on the site had to either come by bicycle or by scooter or whatever, or walk, or be dropped off. So there was no parking on site. So I think so the question you're asking is, was there less chaos on the road? Yeah, outside.
Yes.
Now, I have to rely on what other people have told me because I was based for the whole of the 24 event. I was down the back and bottom of my garden monitoring the sound. We weren't disturbed on Fulbrook Road because it was cordoned off. But I think from what we've heard from people today, it was still a substantial disruption on Selwyn Road in particular. And the other problem was that taxi drivers were not wanting to go into the loop and drop off, so they were then sort of forcing people to get out of the car at the top of Grantchester Road. And I also know, that, which I hadn't heard before, was the coaches were dropping people off on Barton Road. So so my view is that noise-wise, the event was better in that it was under the 65 decibels, but I don't think in terms of the volume of people coming in, it was any better. These were 5,000 person events. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. So I have one more question for the applicants. So we've heard from quite a few residents here about being traumatized, about being, feeling like they couldn't escape. It was quite difficult for quite a few residents. How do you respond to that?
Well, of course, we listen and we take on board these comments. We're not only here to adhere to a maximum level that's set. As Rupert has mentioned, his team are there undertaking objective, audible readings. We have the ability to respond immediately to any complaints that are brought to our attention. The operative last year spent a considerable amount of time with Councillor Clough with regards specifically to noise, and had many discussions with him about that. We are happy to try and do as much as we can to eliminate all of these problems. I can't say that people will never be able to hear it. That's just not possible. But we consult with the experts, the environmental health team, who are there to protect the community. And I can't talk for this event because it hasn't happened and this is a new licence application. What I can say is the noise management team that have held previous events there have not breached that previously. Unfortunately, last year we received no direct communication other than through Councillor Clough during the event or at the beginning of the event. So there was no way to respond immediately to specific instances, which we would very happily do. Whether that's rear gardens, front gardens, we'll take physical readings, but also audible subjectivity readings as well.
Sure.
Yeah, sorry, I just think there is still a little bit of confusion here, just to make it absolutely clear that those experiences are from a totally unconnected event. They are not from the plans for this event, just to make that clear.
And twice the size.
The previous event is in no way connected to this event whatsoever, other than the fact that it shares the same location. They're not the same organisers. There is no connection between those two events. And as Luke pointed out in the beginning, this needs to be addressed on its own merit.
I don't see how you can say that when you're going to have that number of people at this location.
It's half the amount of that people.
Well, no, but you're talking about the future. That's, okay, this year, but next year, okay, in the future, it is the same location. It is the same restricted or narrow roads. You can't say that there's no connection between this application and the others, right? They're happening at the same location. They will have similar traffic problems as has happened previously. You know, okay.
No, I appreciate in terms of scale and location, yes, of course there's links. I think that's fair to say. Again, there is an amount of confusion between 2023 experiences and 2024 experiences. As I say, there was a change and an improvement, a big improvement in the traffic management plans that were proposed that I believe led to an improvement in that experience. So, yeah, we appreciate, as I mentioned previously, our aim is to be as low impact as we can. We intend to, should the license be granted, we intend to liaise further with residents. We're discussing noise, discussing traffic, discussing placement of stewards on certain locations. We can add additional no-entry signage that will hopefully prevent access of non-resident vehicles. We're happy to have all this pre-event consultation. Also worth just considering, whilst the license may be granted in theory for 1 day this year and two days next year's event will still be fully subject to a SAG group approval and process. So a whole new documentation would have to be created and approved. Again, a similar liaising process would be in place with residents and local authorities, as well as a noise management plan would have to be bespokely created for a potential 2-day event with larger attendees, which again would have to be approved by the Environmental Health. Because a license potentially could be granted today for that, potentially for 26 onwards, doesn't necessarily mean the event gets to take place. If 2025 does cause considerable enough issues that the license is reviewed, then of course it would either have to be amended, additional conditions attached, or revoked and not take place in 2026.
Sorry, Chair, just I'm listening to what everyone's saying. Again, I've got the slight disadvantage that I haven't been at these events before. I'm hearing what you're saying. I actually agree. It's very difficult because I run another events in Hertfordshire with almost the same the things going. I'm quite happy to not even consider an event in 2026 on the licence, just to have a licence for half the capacity was already running as an offer to the residents. That's what we had the meeting for in the first place. I kind of went up there and said, look, you don't know me. I'm quite happy to just run the event on 1 day in 2025 and not have the licence continue over to double the size. I'd put a new licence application in after the SAG and speaking to the residents. Because I think that if events running there now for double the size and double the days, I'm being, just speaking for me personally, being quite reasonable over the meeting, I would quite happily run an event half the size of what I'm used to running and not run a 2026 event. Put a new application and speak to the residents, do the SAG debrief. I think that's just going on what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. I realise how strongly it's been put across. So I just thought I'd offer that up now because I think it's prudent to do so.
Okay, thank you for that, but I think we're here to decide on the application before us. So
You can, if the applicant wishes to amend it, you can take that into account now and make a decision on that.
Thank you, Luke.
So I guess to clarify that was the offer to make this a one-time premises licence only for one single day in 2025, namely July the 5th, for 2499 people, and then disregard every mention of 2026 onwards and its potential capacities. That would be subject to a whole new licence application.
There's no other way to proceed, Chair, because I'm listening to the concerns of the residents. We had this meeting 2 weeks before the consultation period was up, and we had a very pleasant conversation, I must be honest. We backwards and forwards of what we consider what the mitigation should be, the issues that have arrived. Again, I haven't been at these other events, they're not my events, so I have to be considerate of what people are saying. I also am a person, I also live next to an event site. I'm listening to what you're saying, sir. I just think it's the only way that's decent to proceed. I've not been in these meetings before, so I have to be careful what I'm saying and what's relevant, but I just think on the grounds of being decent and fair, we're already running half the days and numbers. I just don't even consider a 2026 event until we run something smaller scale, we have parking on site, we are going to apply for a TTTRO. It sounds, from what I've been told by the people, the experts, that they are running events double this size. I don't know the problems, but apparently they are running quite successfully. I can't imagine a scenario where half that amount for one day, if it's already successfully been run for 2 days with double the amount. I just think that's the only way to proceed. And then maybe have a SAG debrief, speak to the residents again. They may say, we absolutely hate what you're doing. We will not want another event, and in which case I can or can not put an application in for 2026.
Thank you for that. Luke, would you like to add something there?
Yeah, just to clarify how it work in real terms is that if the licence was granted that way, then the licence would expire on the day after that event, and there would be no licence in place. So that licence would be expired, it wouldn't exist anymore. So there would be nothing for 2026, 2027 until a new application was received.
Thank you. Yes, can I just ask Alex, can I ask you a question? Have the events of last year and 2023 been reviewed by the environmental health team, and did you come to any conclusions? How do they match with what the applicants are suggesting to manage the traffic and the noise this year?
In terms of complaints received, Luke has got a summary for you here.
So there was no complaints regarding the traffic from our records. In 2023, we received 7 separate noise complaints regarding the level of the music, and in 2024 there were 2 received, and they would have been dealt with by environmental health officers.
If I could just add, the difference between 2023 and 2024 was the implementation of F1 Acoustic, which is Rupert's team, who are proposed as the noise management consultants on this event as well.
Okay, thank you, everyone. You'll be delighted to hear that most of my questions have been answered, which is where I generally go last. However, I do have a couple of questions, and I might have to think about this, but I might have something for Councillor Clough very shortly in respect of what the applicants have just said. It was mentioned that it's not just the day or days of events, not just this event, but any event. There's the get-in time and the get-out time and the setting up. So I'd be interested to know what the get-in time is. I mean, if the events run on a Friday, for instance, when would the get-in start, and what sort of vehicular access would be needed? What sort of movements, that type of thing. So initial disruption, set up noise and time and everything else prior to the event.
So the very beginning of any build would happen on the Tuesday prior to a Friday. That would generally be an implementation of temporary fencing, things of that nature. There will be heavy goods vehicles that will be attending, 40-foot Arctic lorries and vehicles of that nature. They will be banksmaned in from Barton Road. Relatively relatively short distance to be able to manage that. Working times on site will be strictly curfewed at 8 p.m, at which there'll be no quote-unquote noisy work, so banging, things of that nature. No sound will be emitted from any sound system unless previously declared in a residence letter that will go out 1 month minimum prior to the event day.
But of course, there will be sound checks, otherwise you won't know how it sounds. So I'm guessing that will happen probably the day before the event. But so that's a 3-day get-in then. So would it be the same for a get-out as well, or less? Generally, it's less.
Generally less, yeah. It would be 1 to 2 days to leave. And with regards to sound checks, again, they will be at a lower level, but also scheduled and communicated ahead of time.
Okay, thank you. So that would in fact make a total of 5 days. Let's say it's 2 days, 3 to get in, 2 to get out, and the event itself. So that's a 5-day issue then for that area. Okay, that's fine. Now I've got 1 or 2 other questions. I'm just omitting the ones that actually have already been answered. Parking. There can be parking on site. Would you know how many vehicles you're expecting to park on site? Bearing in mind that the other events, and I'm with Councillor Griffin here, it doesn't matter to me or to the residents who was actually running. And the fact that we're still events of the same size in the same location with the same sort of format, whoever is running them. And there was no parking on site at that time, and we've heard some representations about that. So what sort of level of parking do you think you might expect?
So we're going to set a soft limit in the first instance of 600 cars. That's easily accommodated. They can be accommodated on the separate rugby pitches. Whilst it will cost nothing and will be free, we will require prior registration. So ahead of time, we will have a good idea of a number of vehicles that we intend to park. Given the number of attendees planned, my opinion and experience would say 600 will be vastly more than will attend. And 2023, there was parking provided, and I believe the car numbers did exceed 600, probably closer to 800-900. Again, I don't know that off the top of my head. But for this proposed event, a maximum of 600, I don't expect that to be reached, and all vehicles to be pre-registered, but complimentary. Okay, so you said the parking was provided on that site on the 2023 event. Now that I didn't know. Did you know that? I didn't know that.
Yeah,
So,
2023, but not 2024.
Not 2024, right, okay. So what I'm interested in here, one of the things I'm interested in, looking at vehicular movements, the 24, there was no parking, so there wasn't vehicles actually making their way, because I do know that road quite well, to that entrance where this potentially, and I get your point, you don't know if it's going to be 600 or 60, do you? I mean, I know that. But you're making provision for 600 cars, so you then have a potential 600 car, so 1,200, because they've got to sort of come and go. So you've got you've got entrance and exits, where at the moment there aren't any. Or if it was the same as the 2024 event, there are no vehicle movements along that road to the car park because there wasn't a car park. So I'm sort of quite interested to know what the difference there was going to make.
Not actually, no, sorry, I must disagree. Whilst there was no car parking in 2024, there was a considerable amount of pick-up and drop-off at an internal loop that was created within the Rugby Club grounds, taxis, lifts, things of that nature. So there was, I couldn't put a number on it, still a fairly large amount of road traffic did come and go, and sometimes obviously twice because they're not staying, they're dropping and going. But we found in 2023, we didn't implement a one-way down Grantchester Road. It was 2 ways with parking. So obviously on egress, a large number of cars. 2024, we implemented the one-way loop or system, so to speak. We found that made for a much freer access. We also utilised a second gate at the Rugby Club that wasn't used in 2023 that would be utilised onwards. So we have an in and we have an out, and never the twain shall cross.
I'm just going to move very briefly away from the residents and community aspect. Just one question to focus on the site. The parking of vehicles, because as I'm sure you know, on a festival site or anything where there's a lot of public, as we like to say, wheels and heels don't match. So people need to be well away from, so wheels and heels don't match. I'm always nervous when I hear and see that. So you've got mitigation in place so those things don't happen.
Yeah, any vehicle areas such as car parks will be barriered in. The geography of the club, where the car park is in relation to the event site, there is a very natural walkway that will be also barriered off. There'll be stewards directing people across that way. There'll be some lighting there as well. So every effort is taken to ensure, as you mentioned, that doesn't happen. On ingress, not quite as bad with parking because there's parking marshals. They are directing every car to it. On egress, it's slightly more challenging, but we're able to manage the exit of people much more efficiently than individual people from cars, if that makes sense. So the two are kept very separate.
I know Councillor Powers is going to ask some questions in a moment, but I also want to bounce back because it is important. I want to bounce back to the emergency access. I have some past myself in that job, so I'm interested because the residents are quite clear that emergency access is compromised by the amount of vehicles and by the amount, just the general amount of movement, and the fact that there are many people, many hundreds of people in the roads, in and around, and the access to emergency vehicles is, of course, paramount. And as we're always told, because there's so much about it now, I'm pleased to say, in any situation such as a cardiac arrest, the first 3 minutes are really important, and you'll have people on site for that. But the attendance of any emergency vehicle to something of that nature should be no more than 7 minutes. Could you guarantee that?
I can't guarantee how quickly they'll arrive to the vicinity. We can only manage their access from the near vicinity, probably from Barton Road downwards. The one-way system is designed for blue light access. We are then only dealing with one-way flow of traffic to which we can ensure safe passage for any emergency vehicles. We then would demarcate the exit gate as the entrance for the blue light, and we're able to prevent any vehicles that should be leaving at that time from leaving the site, and we can stop traffic flow leaving the site entirely. So should it be a case that there is an ambulance or fire engine on the site that needs to leave, we can stop all traffic, and the particular vehicle will be able to leave the exit, and we can stop traffic coming in, and they'll be able to head north or south, whichever way they see fit.
Sorry, Chair, just to add to that, it's quite important what you said about the first 3 minutes. My intention is to have an ambulance on site with paramedics like I do at all my other events. The same company, a very good company, CQC registered, which means they can leave the site on blue light. So there will be an ambulance on site, not an ambulance coming to us. So there'll be first responders as well. So most of the SIA supervisors are first aid trained as well, and they're DFib trained as well.
Yeah, all SIA officers are first aid trained because that's the first day of the SIA course, isn't it?
But there'll also be,
when you're ready,
in the case of an emergency call needs to be made, full communication with all departments on site, whether that's medics and security and traffic, to ensure that we're able to keep in communication, for example, with the ambulance department. We'll know which direction they're arriving from, so we can make the necessary arrangements either direction to be able to ensure that the access is made. Similarly, we'll have pre-communication with the ambulance service. Should there be an incident in the surrounding area, so perhaps on Fulbrook Road, we can have a contact with them that they will let us know that that is arriving as well, so we can ensure safe passage through that. So that will all happen in pre-event liaison with that service.
Hello, yes, I just wanted to go back to the issue of the traffic management and the number of cars, and I'm sure you know that we are desperately trying to get cars off the road in Cambridge because of the congestion. Have you looked, one of the residents did mention the issue of the coaches parking on Barton Road, which caused some nuisance and obstruction to traffic. Have you looked at the possibilities of the coaches actually arriving at the rugby club? Is there space through the entrance and to use the loop and make an arrangement, something like Cambridge Football Club obviously do, so that people could come by coach, and that means that they would leave, and there would be no noise outside interfering with residents after the
Absolutely.
event.
Plentiful space for a coach to come in. It's the same size as a heavy goods vehicle. We ensure any pre-event communication. We prefer people to use public transport or walking, cycling, but we will definitely, we demarcate the pick-up and drop-off area, and we will ensure that language is inserted to say coaches will be available to come through. It'd be very hard for us to physically manage the traffic on Barton Road, and I wouldn't seek a TTRO for that road, but we will patrol that, especially on ingress and egress, with stewards and security, and we will take every measure we can to not allow coaches to stop on that road and direct them to the dedicated pick-up and drop-off area that will be available, that will very comfortably accommodate a coach. Yeah, the last thing we want is to be holding up traffic on Barton Road. That's definitely not in our desire, and we'll seek to do everything we can. But there is signage on Barton Road that points towards the event access, and also similarly points away. As I mentioned earlier, we will look to point people away from Kings Road, for example. We don't want people creating unofficial cut-throughs, so that will be an amendment to the traffic management plan.
So you do plan to be proactive on that, because that's what would be required, wouldn't it, for it to happen?
Absolutely, yeah. No, it's if we can stop people before they stop, if that makes sense, and because there's plentiful provision for everyone to be dropped off in the location and then to leave, that's fine. There would also be plentiful access for them to park a coach should that be required, and that will all go out in direct email communication to ticket holders. The beauty of it being a ticket-only event is we're able to communicate directly with ticket holders. So traffic management forms one part of that. Constant reminders of please be respectful when you leave. It's done pre-event as well as proactively with the use of stewards and things like that.
Sorry, Chair, just to add to that, as an event organiser that runs similar size events, the topology, the map was up earlier, but the traffic management plan we're in place. The site really lends to vehicular movement, big vehicles entering the main gate. It's quite a wide gate. It also V's off into parking for the matches. So it's a double gate, so you can come in and turn around and then go out the other gate. So what's good about that, you can come, it's very hard because there's not a map here, but people that are coming in would park on the field. People are coming in to drop off would then park in almost like parallel V parking. They can then turn around and either exit through the other gate. So that was quite interesting when I came to the site. That was my first thought. Why there wasn't parking, again, not my event. So parking on site and ease of vehicle movements, including large coaches and vehicles to be able to turn around and leave the site without causing a problem with parking on the actual pitch for patrons.
Okay, we don't have any further questions right now, so I'm just going to ask Luke or Alex if they have anything they'd like to say now. And the applicants are happy that
Sorry, Chair, if I could just, summing up, can I just remind you of your options? Whilst having reference to the information provided by the applicant, the information raised in the representations, and also Cambridge City Council Statement of Licensing Policy, the subcommittee's decision must be made with a view to promoting one or more of the 4 licensing objectives, namely the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, the prevention of public nuisance, and the protection of children from harm. Members should take such steps that they consider are necessary for the promotion of the licensing objectives. The subcommittee may resolve to grant the licence subject to the mandatory conditions and those conditions offered by the applicant, which may be modified to such extent as the authority considers necessary for the promotion of the licensing objectives. To exclude from the scope of the licence any of the licensable activities to which the application relates. To refuse to specify a person in the licence as a premises supervisor. To reject the application. And members must give reasons for their decision. And just to remind you that you do have 5 days to make a decision if you feel you need that time.
Thank you, Luke. Alex?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, applicant's happy, you've said everything you need to say up to this point. Come back to you in a sec. Legal representation, anything to add? Councillor Cuff?
Sorry, I just want to be clear. Is the applicant waiving his, it's a single, he's now applying for 2,500 for this year alone, for this July, is that correct?
That is an offer made. We're going to consider that now as part of our deliberations, and we may come back to ask another couple of questions in 10, 15 minutes or so. So we're going to retire now, consider all of that, take our legal representation with us, and then my plan at the moment is to maybe come back and address that directly. So just give us a few minutes and we'll consider that.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for coming back. We just have a couple of questions that we'd like to ask the applicant, and then I'll say a couple of words. We won't be here very long before we disappear again. Councillor Pounds.
Thank you, Chair. So there's the first thing that we want to ask you about is the TTRO, and to say that any consideration of your application would be on the basis that a TTRO was in place, and that that you have a plan A, and I just want to make sure that that is acceptable and that's in your plan as well. Yeah, and are you aware that you need to get that in 12 weeks before the event?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, and I think we discussed quite in detail today, haven't we, what the TTR, you know, what you have in mind, also the access, and we're very keen on the proactive approach to getting coaches dropping off and picking up inside the grounds, because we think that will solve a huge amount of problems. The other thing that we'd like to ask what your views are, which is to do with the noise level, because obviously that's a huge amount of the concerns of the residents. Now, we know that the upper level is 65 decibels for high frequency sound. What would you consider about reducing the decibel level for the low bass sound? And is that something that you would consider?
We would look to agree that with the environmental health as part of the noise management plan. So it's not just a headline figure of the upper frequency, it's the total frequency. And as Rupert mentioned, it's about the ratio. It's not just the difference. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, so the sort of industry is moving towards using a C-A control of low frequency, which was the C-weighted level minus an A-weighted level, which we already include in our noise management plan as a control measure. The guidance is actually currently, there's a working group looking at doing a new version of the guidance, and I know that's under serious consideration within that.
Thank you. Right.
I think perhaps we could,
Okay,
sorry, if I could just add one last thing. We could perhaps look to add a specific condition that mentions low frequency with regards to an agreement with the environmental health as part of the noise management plan. So it's not just about setting up and upper noise levels, it would be about creating a plan and setting levels for that low frequency as well. So as opposed to setting a number within the license, it would fall under the same protocol as the high-end music level, which is to be agreed with the environmental health as part of the SAG process.
Thank you. And I think the other thing just to say is that we are only considering this for the one-year event for 2025, the application, as we had an oral undertaking that you were happy to submit that.
It's the only way to proceed, Chair. I'm hearing what everyone's saying, and again, I haven't had the luxury of being at any other person's events at the Cambridge Rugby Club. I think in being a decent and fair person, we've had the meeting prior to the application going in. I think we'll have it'd be good to have a SAG debrief and meet with the residents again. And if it's decided it's it's never going to happen again, we just won't go for a licence 2026. If it's okay and we do what we say we're going to do, then we potentially look at getting a new licence. But I think it's the only way to proceed a one-day event.
Yeah, the question I've got is a straightforward one, really. It's just about the level of contact that I'd like to have more information about, because we did hear representation that, I know they weren't your events, I know that, that when other events have been raised, one of the reasons there, of course, I think a good councillor said the same thing, that there were no recorded complaints was because no one could get an answer.
That's simply not true. But I think the specific incident you're referring to is Councillor Clough.
Well, my question is this. My question is, there will be a dedicated line that will be answered. That's all I'm asking.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So
and will there be a named person?
Yes. There can be a named person. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Those are my two questions.
That can be as part of the residents' letter.
Can I just add to that, because it's a small detail, but it's quite important. At the other events I do in Hertfordshire, we do a letter drop to the nearest, nearest radius of, in this case, it would be Fulbrook Road in Selwyn, is it? We would letter drop with a number on it, a dedicated number to the noise consultant. I do that at all my other events. I don't know if these guys do that. I haven't actually asked the question. But it's a small detail, but it answers your question.
Yeah, the providing of a letter and a dedicated phone number is a proposed condition already.
Okay, thank you so much. And the last word will go to, I think, Councillor Clough, if you want to sum up, if you've got anything else to say on behalf of your residents, then we're going to give you the opportunity to do that, because we've decided that we won't be coming back to you today. We've got lots of information to go through, and we want to make sure that we have quality time to do that, and we're not rushing through it and trying to get something down on paper by the time everybody goes home for tea time. So we won't be coming back with a decision today. So that's why I'm asking you now. So once we retire from this convening, then everybody can disperse and go their own way, and we'll be in touch. And I'll get advice in a moment as to the timescale of when we should do that. Councillor Clough?
Thank you for the opportunity to speak again. Essentially, for the residents, there is the feeling that this would be an additional burden upon them, and that it's really important that the council, the licensing panel, takes very careful note of the code of practice, because it is basically 1 to 3 events of concert days per year for an urban or rural location at this level of noise. So those are the, and as you've heard, residents even at that level finding it unacceptable. So really we need to move away from having these events of this nature at the rugby club site. It's totally unsuitable. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that.
Sorry, can I just clarify the code of practice?
Yeah, please do. I was going to ask you that.
The code of practice doesn't limit the number of days to 1 to 3. Those are what the guidelines are. So the guidelines would change if it went past 3 days to 4, where it would, rather than the 65 dB, it would go to background noise. You couldn't go above background noise. You could only go above, 15 dB above the background noise for no more than 15 minutes. It doesn't limit the number of days a venue can have.
So we have 5 days in which to respond. As I say, it will give you some measure as to how seriously we're taking this application.
Sorry, are we allowed a rebuttal at all?
Sorry?
Am I allowed to say anything? It's fairly uncommon for a public speaker to have the last word in a committee meeting like this.
Councillor is allowed to do that, and he's representing his constituents, and that's fine. We don't need much more information. Well, did you have something else to say?
No, it's quite unusual for that to happen, but absolutely fine.
Chair's discretion.
Sorry?
Chair's discretion.
No, absolutely fine. Just further clarification on that guidance is guidance, and it's not a definite limit on days.
No.
Worth bearing in mind, if we're bringing past history into it, there's never been a single breach of any licensing condition in this location. No license has ever been taken to review. There's never been any responsible authority representations against these licenses. There's no responsible authority representation against this specific application. There's been full liaison with all parties from a responsible authority point of view, and some additional conditions have been amended and offered. So I just felt it was quite necessary to make that clear.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Luke, any response? Okay, so we have 5, as I was saying, we have 5 days in which to respond. So is that when we have to do the letter by, or will they receive it in 5 days?
You have to make a decision within 5 days, is my understanding, Ian, is that correct?
Yes, I think if we had until 4 p.m. on Friday, that would be within those 5 days.
That's how I understood it. I just want to clarify that 5 days didn't take in postage time and all that. So that's how I understood it. that's the deadline, because generally we'll do it on the same day. Okay, thank you very much, everybody, for taking the time to come today, and we'll be in touch within 5 days. Thank you.